Most people think happiness is something that happens when life finally gets better, whatever that means. Like when the money is right, when the relationship is right, when the body is right, nice and healthy, when the work is right, when the world finally gives us a reason to feel at peace. But what if happiness is not just the result of circumstances? What if happiness is also a habit, a practice, dare I say, a discipline? What if the mind and the body and the nervous system, the subconscious and our self-image can be trained toward either misery or joy? Because many people don't realize they are practicing being unhappy. They rehearse what is wrong. They return to resentment. They expect disappointment. They identify with stress, constantly scanning for what is wrong and missing. They prepare for the next problem before they even have time to breathe from the last crisis. And then they'll wonder why joy feels so far away. Most people believe that happiness can become a habit. We certainly do. Something practiced and strengthened through their inner control, inner orientation. Through Ashla, we would say it this way. Hope and grace, they're not passive. They are cultivated. And our luminari practice the inner conditions that allow the light to be experienced. My name is Justin Gates. Joining me today is Michael Perry.
Hey, fam.
And you're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the show. So grateful that you're here. We really are, Michael. Very grateful for these guys. We really do appreciate you joining us today. Before we get too deep into this, if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe. It really helps us go a long way in what we're trying to accomplish here, and that's to reach as many people as we can. So this episode today, Michael, we're talking about happiness and joy, not as things that are conditional to life, but things that are practiced like a discipline. Right? Not simply just something, again, a reaction to whatever's happening around us.
This episode really hits home for me because I remember I spent most of my childhood in a depressed state. I was told I was depressed, I embodied it, and it just was what I thought I was always going to be like. And I meet so many people nowadays that depression is very much a part of their personality, right?
Yeah.
It is a way of being. And to be honest, it is. But it's not a definition of who you are as a person. We are all malleable. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had this shift in my thinking when I was a kid where I realized I was sick and tired of dreading getting out of bed every day for what horrible thing was going to happen next in my life. And to start finding the good in life, because it wasn't appearing in my life, so I had to go looking for it. I was determined. And little did I know what I was actually doing. I talk often about the RAS, the reticular activating system in our brains. This system in our brains scans for evidence of what we believe to be true. And if we tell ourselves that life is horrible, our brains will intuitively make sure it scans everything and soak in everything bad in your life and scan right over anything that could be good, a silver lining, anything. But if we shift that and start looking for what is good in life, what areas we can release control and accept, to surrender, embody what is good with what we got, because what we got is what we're stuck with, right? Instead of this wishful thinking, I love the hook where it's like, more money, the perfect job, the perfect relationship. It's a trap. It's always the promise of one day I'm allowed to be happy, which then just ingrains in us that right now is not a time I'm allowed to be happy.
Yeah, you're right. So today we're going to look at how... There's your episode, that's right, in a nutshell. So today we're going to look at how the different parts of ourselves, our minds, our bodies, our souls even, our hearts can be trained and are trained really toward misery, fear, resentment, or gratitude, peace, hope, these things, right? We can decide what we plant in our gardens here. So yes, happiness for most of us is influenced by what is happening around us, circumstances. But if we want joy and happiness to be something that's stable for us, no matter what's happening, then we have to learn not to be dependent on circumstances. And most of us treat happiness as if life is throwing us a bone, right? Or we're good luck, or we have good luck, or finally I get a break, right? Because we're always kind of sitting in the muck, and we say, oh, finally someone throws me a bone here. Like I said earlier, I just got to wait till the money's better. I got to wait till my body is just right. I got to wait till I get the perfect job. Right, Michael, when the world calms down. But if happiness depends entirely on circumstances that we have absolutely no control over, really, most of those things, it will always be fragile, won't it?
Yeah. Well, and I think there's one other important thing beyond circumstances, because this is what I see with a lot of miserable people. And it is the word expectations. And this goes hand in hand because we expect results. Circumstances makes it different. We expect people to be a certain way. We expect certain outcomes. We expect certain things to just appear in our lives. And when we hold our rigidly to things need to be this way for me to be content, we end up trying to control everything. We end up freaking out when things don't go our way. When we have expectations to how things should be, which life does not like to play that game, the more miserable we become.
Because everything changes. Even if it's momentary change, things change, right? Jobs change, money changes, money becomes less valuable as it has been lately, right? This is recorded in 2026. If you're listening to this 10 years from now, good luck. I don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now, but now money is fragile. But things change. All things change. The world changes. We change. Our bodies change, right? If joy can only exist when life is perfect, then joy will never exist. It will always be out of reach. Now, I will say that this doesn't mean that the circumstances around us don't matter, because they do. Pain matters, stress matters, grief, loss, these things happen, right? That's the truth. And this path doesn't ask us to deny reality or pretend that suffering isn't real, but it does ask for us to recognize that the inner world matters just as much, right? Michael, two people can face similar circumstances and experience them in a very different way, can't they?
100%. When you brought up another really good important point, because I was guilty of this, is there's a line between happiness and being happy, and then being in denial and keeping your head above the clouds, right? Because sometimes when we try too hard to stay happy, to always stay optimistic, we end up watching the world burn beneath us. But if we keep looking up here, we won't notice it. We won't learn the lessons life is teaching me. Well, the silver lining is my car got in an accident. It's totaled. Now I don't have to worry about my job because I don't have one. Yay. Silver lining.
I don't have to, I got in trouble a couple years ago. Maybe it wasn't that far back, but there are times where this false optimism can cross into some really dangerous territory, right? Because then we just start living in a fantasy and everything is perfect. Nothing's perfect. Not for humans anyway, right? I think we all were absent for that class that day when they handed out perfection. Yep. But axiom of light, in the darkest of times, look to the light and you will find that which is desperately needed. Now, I chose this axiom because this is about refusing to make joy dependent on perfect circumstances. Darkness is not unreal. Darkness is a very real thing. To deny that is to deny reality, right? Fear is a very real thing. To deny that is to live in falsities and illusion. Fear is a real thing. This axiom also doesn't say that difficulty is meaningless, and it certainly doesn't tell us to pretend that everything is fine. It tells us, Michael, where to look. Where does it say? In the darkest times, look to the what?
Look to the light. Well, it's the truth. I mean, again, it's not being in denial of what you're going through, nor denying the emotions that come up. Sadness is an important emotion. It tells you how deeply you loved. Grief is very much a part of that. But if we only focus on the horrible things that happen, which I think this is how so many people get stuck in depression is, again, life is seasons and we go through these hard times when something traumatic happens. We become so fixated on that bad that all of a sudden our whole world gets dyed that. But if we keep our eyes on the light, on the good, and it doesn't mean being relentlessly happy and optimistic through these periods, but being able to see good in the world, to good in your life, especially, you can allow yourself to not let the darkness consume you.
That's the foundation of this entire episode. Happiness as a practice, as a discipline, does not mean that life is always easy. And in fact, life is rarely easy. It's hard to even gauge what easy means. What's easy for me is life-shattering for you, right? But what it means is that even and especially when hardship is present, when the hard things are present, we learn to turn toward what still gives life meaning, what gives us hope and gratitude, right? Joy, the practice of joy and happiness, is not the denial of darkness. It is simply the refusal to let darkness become the only reality that we will recognize. Now, Michael, why do people often, and maybe they don't often believe this, but it just really seems to me like they believe happiness has to wait until everything outside changes first?
Well, I think, again, it sort of ties back to what is your belief system? What is your measurement of happiness? When you're stuck with expectations of how the world should be and how it actually operates, and you're constantly being met with disappointment, when your life is constantly not going your way, and that's what you're focused on, you end up looking at happiness as some foreign entity that one day you may be deserving of having. If you don't allow yourself to have those moments, if you don't allow yourself to embrace happiness, to make it a practice, then it'll always be something out of reach. And you know what? When you're telling yourself that perfect relationship and everything else that would get you happy, I guarantee you, if you got it, you wouldn't be happy.
A lot of us practice unhappiness without even realizing it, don't we?
It's easy to fall into.
I don't think anybody really wants to be unhappy. I don't think that's a thing. And no, I'm going to just say this, that I don't think most people are choosing misery. That doesn't mean that we're not practicing it, though, right? At least practicing the conditions that make these darker things easier for us to get stuck in, because we like to rehearse our resentment. We are what we repeat, and we repeat resentment, and we return to old wounds because we refuse to do the work to heal them, right? We rehearse these things that create anxiety and stress in us by imagining what went wrong in the past and what's going to happen, what's wrong going to happen in the future, right? We constantly rehearse and measure what's missing in our life instead of what's there. So over time, our mind and our bodies begin to just default to these things, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, right. It comes back to, you don't know what you have until you lose it. It's because so many of us are guilty of taking advantage of what's good in our lives until we don't have it anymore.
So this is where self-image really becomes important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, when you're constantly looking for these things, you can't help but feel your own self-worth, your own capabilities. I mean, again, when you're constantly trying to make things happen, when you're trying to control things and things aren't going your way, it creates helplessness. And I think that is what's underneath the disappointment, is this feeling of being helpless about the circumstances and events in your life, and in turn, the people. The greatest gift I ever gave myself was being able to tell myself that I don't put expectations on people. I let people show me who they are and the place they have in my life. But beyond that, it's like, I know what's in my control. I give expectations to those who deserve it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, because you can't control where you put your energy. You may not be able to control a great many of things, but that is one thing we can control, right? Axiom of light: do not compound matters by repeating mistakes. This one tends to trip up my students, doesn't it, Michael?
Yeah. Well, it's the law of confusion in action, right?
Right. What do you mean I'm making mistakes? You should celebrate that, Michael. Remember what I told you? You're making mistakes. That's a great thing. You lucky bastard. You get to make mistakes and learn from them. That will teach you.
You just got to be open to the learning from it.
That will teach you more than I could ever possibly teach you, right? Because the practice of unhappiness here often makes the pain and misery worse, right? This doesn't mean the original wound, whatever is causing this, wasn't real. Of course it was real. And even if it's not still happening or still real, literally, it still feels real for you. The stress is still real, right? The feeling of loss is still real. But when we continue and repeatedly rehearse resentment and fear and bitterness and lack, right? People are poor and then they just repeat lack and never go anywhere. And it's like, well, yeah, you are in a condition, you're resonating lack. You're resonating resentment and fear and all these things, right?
Even if you're not expressing it outwardly, if it's going on in here,
it's happening. You are charging that antenna, right? And then we like to add more layers upon layers upon layers to the suffering. We compound that wound by feeding the pattern, don't we?
Well, I think, again, it's as above, so below, right? Like, when we vibrate at a certain level, there's this thing called the emotional guidance scale, which shows like levels of vibration. And we usually operate within 2 or 3 of them and go back and forth. Sometimes we'll jump up here, sometimes we'll jump down here, but we have a baseline. And if we don't meet ourselves at this point and realize what the next step is, this is one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, especially during my dark night of the soul. I can't go from suffering to joy like this. I might have moments, but I need to go from suffering to anger. From anger into, what was after anger? Determination. I can't remember what the one that came after it. But the point being is there's a transitionary ladder we have to climb. And it takes time, effort, and cognitive change. We can't overnight decide we're going to be happy, but we can decide we're going to start practicing the things necessary to get there.
What this axiom did was give you a mirror, very practical mirror, right? Where are you repeating these emotional habits that keeps you trapped? Where are you rehearsing misery and calling it realism or suffering, right? Where am I returning? Where are you returning to the same old story and wondering why you feel so heavy? Right? That's why. And mirrors are good for us. We don't like them. And shadow work, you have to have mirrors. Whether that's a mirror that you create for yourself or a mirror in another person, like a teacher or a mentor, right? You need these mirrors. We have to have these mirrors so that we can see what's actually happening.
Well, and I think one important part about this is like, if when you hear this axiom, if your first thing you jump to of what's holding you back is something outside of you, if it's a person or a situation or event, then you're not asking the right question. It is, what is the part I'm playing in my own suffering? That is where the lesson lies. Yeah. All right. It could be not advocating for yourself. It could be not trusting the universe enough to go find a different job. It might be that you keep self-abandoning yourself to keep the peace. It's all about finding what is it that I have control over, which is very little, that is adding to my suffering so that I can change it and start living more in alignment.
Yeah. This is where we really need a lot of compassion and honesty, because you're going to get both. You know, I mean, when you hear this stuff, when you're mirroring back, compassion and honesty are important. Because when we talk about practice, this really, I think for a lot of us, Michael, subconsciously practicing this unhappiness, you know, I don't want people to hear, you caused all your suffering.
Yeah, right.
That's what you're going to hear, but I don't want you to really hear that, because that's not what we're saying. Pain and trauma and life happens, right? Remember the old bumper sticker, shit happens?
Yeah, and hurt people hurt people. Time. Like, man, we all are flawed human beings who have horrible coping mechanisms. And the goal is to get to a place of personal accountability. And again, it's not to belittle your suffering. That horrible relationship I was in for 7 years that was abusive emotionally, psychologically, I could easily blame her for all the pain I felt through that relationship. I could easily have left that relationship and felt bitter and jaded to the world. But instead, I held myself accountable. It's like I stayed in that relationship far too long. I didn't assert myself. And honestly, I don't know if I could have in that relationship. But the point being is, what part did I play in that suffering? And it's all not self-attack or judgment. It's just an honest, curious, what could I do differently to avoid this suffering next time?
I am not revealing this to condemn you. I am revealing this to you so that you can be free, right? Because if you can see what you're practicing and what you're rehearsing and what you keep returning to, you can start practicing something else, right? So the question here is not, have you suffered? Most of us have. I think all of us have. I don't think anyone has got away from suffering, right? Literally no one. The question has to be, has suffering become the only thing that I trust or that I know?
Ooh, that's good.
Right? And that's where the work begins. Not by denying anything. Try to be as compassionate as we can, and we need to be as compassionate to ourselves as we can when we're doing this, but by refusing to keep feeding that identity that says pain is all I am allowed to know. because I'm telling you, you're allowed to know something else. You may not be choosing this misery consciously, but you sure are practicing it repeatedly, whether you know it or not.
Yep.
But there is a way out of this, Michael, right?
Very much so. I mean, you were sort of touching on it right there. It is beginning to catch what you repeat in your mind. Again, 95% of our thoughts come from our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind stems from our belief systems and nervous system. And again, when we're constantly teaching ourselves to scan for what's bad, that's all we're going to see. But we can start shifting that. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take a lot of repetition. But it's looking for the good in life. Maybe it's the smile of your child. Maybe it is a blue sky on a beautiful day. Maybe it's hearing birds in the distance, or just being able to have a day at work that wasn't as stressful as another. It's beginning to look for all the small moments to appreciate. Gratitude, man, that is like the ultimate weapon against this.
Yeah, and gratitude is powerful because gratitude doesn't pretend that things didn't happen. Gratitude doesn't erase any hardships that you've gone through, but what it does, it helps us train our attention to recognize what is good in life, what is life-giving. This is why I really endorse service, right? As my student, I really pushed you to serve. Literally at the core of our order and our temple is service. That is literally like one of the main reasons why we exist. Not because we are ignoring pain. Gratitude doesn't ignore pain, as I said, but it gives it a channel, right? It gives us a channel to put our love, to put our attention, to put the things that grief may have tried to steal from us or hardship was stealing from us, right? And here's the great thing about gratitude, Michael. It gives you no promises. It does not promise that everything's going to be happy-go-lucky, hunky-dory, right? Yeah. Sunshine and rainbows. It doesn't promise you shit. It doesn't make any promises because nothing is instant here, right? But what it does promise you, Michael, is that it will create room to experience something beneath the noise.
Well, and I mean, I'm glad you brought up service because this is something I didn't realize was helping me, but it was something that I've practiced most of my adult life. Every year I'd make it a habit to at least go to one or two places to volunteer. Just a year, just to get out there, be in the community, meet people, get involved. And there is a sense of fulfillment that comes from that. Service is one of the most powerful tools you have to build self-trust and a sense of belonging and a sense of contribution. I mean, I've actually been doing a ton of research into isolation and what impacts people the most and what helps the most. And the biggest thing people need to overcome that resistance is a sense of contribution. There's nothing more powerful.
Yeah, you're right. True joy is cultivated through many of the things you're talking about. Yeah, through our attention, of course, gratitude, but it's also cultivated through finding our meaning and fulfilling that, serving that meaning, right? That purpose, connection. By connecting to others, we tend to do it through service. You can connect to people in lots of ways, right? Right relationship, right action with ourselves. Sometimes even stillness. We can cultivate joy through that. Really at the core of this is the willingness to receive what is good without guilt or suspicion that something is owed for it, right? It's built through these small, little repeated practices that teaches our body, our nervous system, our minds, our subconscious, that peace is safe. Goodness is a real thing that is allowed and that we can trust ourselves and things outside of us. The habit of happiness, Michael, is created through that daily return, right? Not some dramatic practice and not through performance or perfection. Daily return.
I mean, think of it like this. Perspective is either a superpower or a kryptonite. One thing that has always baffled me is how many people I meet that cannot stand other people, that sees nothing but malicious intent and selfishness and all these horrible things. They project that onto everyone they meet. And it breaks my heart because I see the light in everyone. I see the humanity in everyone. It doesn't mean that people don't do messed up things. Again, hurt people. But if you train yourself to look at the humanity beneath someone, you begin to understand them from a level that's much less superficial than judging someone based on an ideology. Yeah. Because people want contribution. People want to be a part of something. And there is beauty in that. But our perspective has the power to tell us what we see. And perspective is trained, not adopted.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, one way I try to put perspective in a way people can understand, because sometimes they don't understand how powerful it is, how powerful creators we are of illusionary things. And I kind of think of it like this. I try to explain it like this. If you're familiar with augmented reality, those glasses, right? That's not quite VR, but it does bring things into the environment. That's what perspective is. That's what perspective can do. It can literally add a layer to reality that alters it for you, right? Literally alter it. Literally alter it for you. So like if there's a tree in real life in front of you, your perspective could make that tree into something else or be gone or whatever, right? This is what gets us in trouble if we don't respect our perspectives, respect our power as creators, both tangible things and illusionary things. So, and that's brings us back to responsibility and accountability, right? Those words that lots of us like to run from. Do you have any final thoughts for the show today before we move on to the exercise and stuff?
There's 4 stages of consciousness, and I'm not going to get into the 4 stages, but the first stage is life is happening to me. When we let our emotions tell us stories, when we go through situations in life and we start feeding a narrative, that is what creates your perspective. And most of the things you suffer from stem from this very mechanism. When we allow narratives to direct and define our lives, when we decide to believe the stories we tell ourselves instead of looking at things from multiple perspectives, we surrender our own power to situations, circumstances, and expectations. The second stage is life is happening for me, which is understanding there is growth in anything, whether it's struggle or benefit. So I challenge you, the listener, if you struggle with being in rumination, in darkness, in depression, and anything that feels helpless, to find your way back to the good, start with one small measurable step. Pause before you allow an emotion to take over and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this event that is fueling this? Because often the stories do nothing but surrender our power. And there's always so much more power we can have if we catch that story before it starts winding its way into our brain like a worm.
Yeah. Well said, well said. So our exercise today, I'm going to give you the choice. You can do this in meditation or you can use your journal, whichever you prefer. But remember, using our journals is a form of meditation. So I'm not biased either way, Michael, at all.
Not at all.
Not even a little bit. So take 10 minutes in stillness or with your journal. I want you to name one way that you have been practicing unhappiness. Now, if it's in your journal, write it down. If you're practicing stillness and meditation right now, conjure that. Don't judge it. See it for what it is. Name what you've been practicing. Name one way you've been practicing unhappiness. Some examples. It could be worry or resentment. Or you could be comparing yourself to others. Oh, be self-criticism, bitterness, right? Expectations, as Michael pointed out. You could be expecting disappointment all the time. Whatever it is, write it down. Think about it. Don't judge it. Step 2. You're going to ask yourself a very important question. What does this pattern keep training in me? Step 3 is to choose one small practice of joy for today. Don't dilly-dally. Do it today. Literally, after this practice, figure out what one small joy practice you're going to do for the day and do it. Just one. And I'll give you some examples. If you like to write things in your journal, write 3 things that you're grateful for and why they matter. Not just what they are, but why they matter to you. If you prefer to sit in stillness, sit for 5 minutes and let the body receive calm, right? Actually feel calm, feel relaxed. If it takes more than 5 minutes, then give yourself more than 5 minutes. Give yourself some grace. Or you could do one act of service, one that's not going to require any recognition. Or when you're out and about on your walks, because walks are good for you, right, Michael? Walks are good for you. Bring your water. Don't forget that. Notice one beautiful thing. Notice just one beautiful thing in the world and sit with that for 30 seconds and be grateful for that beautiful thing. Be whatever you want it to be. Those are just some examples. I'm sure you guys can come up. You guys are clever. You can come up with things around that too. Step 4 is going to let the practice be felt. Give it some of your emotional energy. Feel it. Not just think about it, but feel it too. Involve your body. Don't rush these things. Our body needs to experience these things too. They need to experience the good things as well as the chaotic things, right, Michael? Because then we train it that both things are not only going to happen to us, but they're both okay. And look, even if you're just planting seeds with these things, that's perfectly okay too. Don't force yourself into feeling something if you're not ready. That just means you got to keep practicing this exercise. Step 5, repeat daily for 7 days and notice what happens. Try to do this for 7 days in a row. I'll give you an example of this, real life example. I'm going through cardiac rehab for my stent and all that stuff. Today was the first day that I was jamming on the treadmill, and because they make you do treadmills and exercise bikes. Today was the first day in a very long time that I actually had that euphoric feeling, Michael, when I was working out. You know, that one you get. It's very difficult to explain, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. I finally had that again today.
Oh, that's
wasn't
beautiful.
looking for it. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't expecting it. I really was expecting kind of like, oh, this is going to be crappy and I'm going to hurt and I'm going to whatever. But I had that euphoric feeling that the body gets. I let my body finally feel something good for once. So that's what you're looking for here. Our affirmations for today. I allow joy, peace, and gratitude to become familiar within me. I do not need perfect circumstances to practice alignment with truth. Hope and grace are living disciplines within my soul. I release the belief that suffering must define me. I train my mind to receive the light through daily practice. And our extracurricular journal prompts for you go-getters. How have I unconsciously practiced unhappiness? What emotional state feels most familiar to me? Do I feel safe receiving joy, stillness, or goodness? What small practice helps me return to hope? What would change if I allowed happiness to become part of my self-image? Look, guys, happiness is not something only from when life gives it to us, or some circumstances or expectations actually accidentally work out for us, right? It's something that we cultivate within. It's a habit, a discipline of attention, a habit of cultivating gratitude, a habit of returning to goodness as often as we can. This doesn't mean we deny suffering. Doesn't mean that we pretend that wounds and pain and all these bad things aren't real, because they are. It just means that we stop allowing these things to be the only thing that we allow ourselves to feel and believe are real. Our beings could be trained and moved toward misery and rehearsed at fear and resentment and all this stuff. But it can also be trained and moved toward joy and peace and gratitude, right? You get to choose that part. So as you move forward from this episode, I want you guys to keep asking yourselves these important questions. What have I been practicing? Where am I practicing this stuff? Where do I feel it? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Be honest with yourself, right? Because I want you to understand what state of being you have allowed yourself to become familiar with and comfortable with, right? And for a lot of us, it probably isn't the fun stuff, the good stuff, right? So do the exercise, choose one thing and work through it. At least try it for the week. So joy is not forced. Again, it's a discipline. It's cultivated. And if this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to like this episode. Love it if you're on Facebook. I love to see the hearts. They're my favorite things, Michael.
Hell yeah.
Subscribe to our pages, the channel, if you're not already a subscriber. Share our content out. Share it with someone who may need to remember that happiness is not weakness or luck. God, it's not luck. You can make this a sacred practice.
Or something at the end of a finish line.
Yeah. Check out all our socials, the Facebooks, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes.
YouTube. Yep.
Check us out on our podcast.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
If you want videos, if you want to see us in video, see our shiny, beautiful faces. Spotify and YouTube is where you can currently see them now. If you just like the audio stuff, then you can, get those pretty much anywhere. So, and don't forget to check out the greatest website ever constructed in the history of websites.
newashla.com.
Make sure you check out the episode guide for this, the companion. It'll help you go deeper into this episode today, because we're only spending, 35, 40 minutes with you. You can spend the whole week with this episode if you use the companion guide and go over to the website to find, the newsletter, Michael, is where they're going to get even deeper into this stuff, right?
Yeah. Now, if you subscribe to the newsletter, we're going to be sending out what we call sanctuary guides, which is an even more thorough in depth. The episode guides are anywhere from 3 to 5 pages to give you a week to work with it. But it's the sanctuary guides, which we're offering for free just through our newsletter. Download links right in it for you to dive deeper into the topics and really flesh out the material and just develop a practice that can help you really shift from feeling the consequences of being in this negative states and cultivating a life of happiness and meaning.
So we thank you guys so much for joining us. We love you. Thank you for sharing this and supporting our work and helping these teachings reach more people. So until next time, with love and gratitude, Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.